Did you know that one of the major reasons of why love relationships fall apart is because we're not honest with our partners? It might seem a little strange. You go, wait a minute, I'm always honest. Lots of us go ahead and go around telling everyone, well, one of the things that you always get from me is honesty. Like, the one thing you're not going to worry about me is I'm always going to be honest with you. But in the 20 years of working with couples and individuals that come into the office trying to figure out why is love failing me again, or why is this relationship such a struggle, or why, do you know when we get down to the basic bottom line, unless there's some kind of like emotional disorder or mental illness or addiction that's getting in the way of their relationship, the number one reason is that people aren't honest with each other. It's like unbelievable. I was working with a client the other day that came in and sat down and said, as a matter of fact, we blogged about this. A 3-year relationship just ended. And when she was talking about all the different things that happened to end the relationship, she goes, I've got to be honest with you, David, if I think about it, one of the questions you asked me was what was my role in the demise of the relationship? And I had a bigger role than I thought. The first time you asked me that question, I thought you were crazy because he kicked me out of his house at 3 o'clock in the morning and told me to drive home. And I had a 5-hour drive. And I'm sitting there going, no, this guy's psycho. He's nuts. And that might be the case. But they were together for 3 years. And she said, so when I sat down and reflected what was my role, do you want to know what I found out? Is that I was not honest with him from the beginning about some pretty major issues. Now, you can read about this, but in a nutshell, it was this, is that he liked to go to a certain type of church, and whether they were in his town or her town, they always had to go to this one type of church. And she said, David, for the first couple months I went, and I was really happy and everything, but I was only happy because I was with him. I couldn't have cared less of where we went. But over the course of 3 years, I started to really resent the fact that we're going to, quote-unquote, his type of church. I didn't like the church at all. I didn't like the teachings. I didn't like anything about it. Yet I kept going. And she said, now when I look back, I think, I had some resentments against him and against myself because, what was it? I wasn't honest. Isn't that interesting? See, when we're not honest about anything within a relationship, is that dishonesty, it's subtle at first, and, we don't want to rock the boat. As she said, and I printed this out on her email, one of the things that she said is that her resentment then led to this inability to what? Be honest, led her to an inability to be fully intimate with him because she was holding a grudge. And that's what happens. And now some people hold the grudge for 30, 40, 50 years. They never work through it, but they'd rather stay in a crappy relationship because you can't be in a good relationship and have resentments. They've got to come out somehow, some way. Through the work that I do as a minister and coach or through a therapist or something. They've got to come out. We've got to process through them. So the number one thing that she says that, her role is that she wasn't honest. The other thing is that whenever they were in his town, they always went to his parents for lunch every weekend. And she said at first it was great. Everything is super and fine and wonderful. And then she said that was something else for the last 2.5 years I resented. Because what it meant is that we only had a short period of time on weekends to spend together. And that was a 3 or 4 hour block out of every Saturday that we went to lunch. And she said, David, we just didn't have enough time together. And I started to resent that. So here she has all of these resentments, and she's telling him that she's always honest about how she's feeling. But 3 years later, when the relationship ends, and I asked her to do this work, she said, David, I hadn't been honest with him. And there were more and more things that came out that she wasn't honest about. She would hold resentments against him because she had to go to his parents for lunch, because they had to go to the one type of church that he liked, and she wasn't honest. If we're in relationships where we're not honest, honestly, truthfully honest about how we're feeling, we will never have that depth of love. Again, we might stay for a long time, but it might not be that real deep love. What happens more often than not, people that walk into my office for work and for help on their relationships, is we see this is the reason why the last 2 or 3 or 6 or 8 relationships fail. The number one reason is dishonesty, because we're afraid of being rejected by our partner. Like she even said, I was afraid that if I said to him, you know what, why don't you go to church by yourself, I'll go to my own church, and we'll meet up afterwards, that he would walk away. She was petrified that if she said, I'm really bored with spending 3 hours with your parents every weekend that we're together, why don't you go and I'll go do my own things. I'll go shopping, I'll go to the beach, I'll do something. She was afraid if she was honest with him, he would walk away. Now, there's a chance he would have. There's a chance he could have said, you know what, my parents come with the picture, or, this church comes with the picture, or whatever, and you're going to have to leave. And that would have been tough. but at least she would have been honest. So I'm going to ask you to do that today. Look at all the things that are going on within your relationship. When her relationship ended and it was so tough and so terrible, she walked away with an amazing lesson. From the beginning, be honest. Deal with the consequences up front, and then you won't have to deal with them throughout a lifetime, or in her case, 3 years of a relationship that never reached its zenith, never was as fulfilling as it could have been. If I can help you with your relationships, I would love to. Visit us at talkdavid.com and have a fantastic day.